All right, guys, I have tried and tried and tried to upload this video to Canvas. This is about the third or fourth time I've had to record these notes, and Canvas keeps erroring my upload. So I'm just going to go old school and record it on my camcorder and try and process it as best I can, and hopefully I can get it uploaded to you guys. I've never had this much trouble trying to figure out how to upload notes. Anyway, so this will be about third or fourth time I've had to do these notes. Hopefully this time it will work, and I will be able to get these up to you. The announcement that I had posted in the on Canvas hopefully kind of gave you a little bit of a feel of what the class is going to entail. Of course, the syllabus is up there as well. So if you guys have any questions or anything, you can always shoot me a message in Canvas, or you can send me an email at shaun.culwell@navarrocollege.edu, and I will get right back to you. I'm usually pretty good about checking those at least once a day. So hopefully I'll see your message and get a response back to you very, very quickly, shortly, whatever. Okay, so for the third time for me and first time for you, let's talk about biological foundations, heredity, prenatal development, and birth. Yeah, so let's get started. All right, mechanisms of heredity. I'm just going to kind of read along the notes. You guys have access to all 5 chapters that will be on your first exam. So this is the first of 5 chapters. The chapters are actually pretty short, so hopefully it's not going to be something that is too overwhelming. This first part is children, and that's usually where the crux of the majority of this class tends to lie. So there's quite a bit of information, and hopefully we will get through it as painlessly as possible. But make sure that if you're going through your notes or whatever, and something doesn't make sense, or you have a question or don't understand something, again, just shoot me a message and get with me. We talked about what the red text means in the notes on that announcement I made. Maybe was it today or yesterday? But the red text is important, so that is stuff that is fair game for the test. The white text is more kind of informational. If it's not in red, you will not see it again. You don't need the book for this class. So everything you need for the exams and to make a 100 in this class will be through the lecture notes that I'm posting online, and the videos that are also online. And each one of those videos has a corresponding chapter to it. So make sure that you watch those videos as well, because the videos will be on your exam. It's going to be kind of easy, gimme type questions, just to make sure you have a pulse and you pay somewhat of a modicum of attention. But yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know, and let's get through this, and hopefully this is the last time I have to do this chapter. I'm really sick of doing this chapter, but Canvas was not cooperating with me. I tried the new studio link down there. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but it's a brand new thing, and apparently they haven't gotten the kinks ironed out, because the first time it completely lost the file, and the second time it said it was unable to process the file. But we're just going to do it old school, and I'm going to upload this to YouTube and then link back to it on Canvas. So hopefully you'll be able to see this as well. All right. So mechanisms of heredity. At conception, one egg from your mother and one sperm from your father unite to create a new organism that incorporates some characteristics of each parent. So you have some characteristics from mom and some characteristics from dad. At conception, sperm fertilizes egg, and you get dad's parts and you get mom's parts. Each egg and sperm cell contain 23 chromosomes, which are thread-like structures in the nucleus of each cell that contain genetic material. So you'll notice that this text is in red. Obviously, chromosomes are important, so that's why I made that red. There are 23 single chromosomes in each sex cell, the sperm and the egg. And once they unite in fertilization, you have 23 pairs of chromosomes. When the sperm penetrates the egg and fertilization occurs, each of the 23 individual chromosomes from this, you have 23 from sperm and 23 from egg. Those individual chromosomes combine and form 23 pairs of chromosomes. So on slide 6, you can see kind of a genetic map. That's what that's called, which shows 22 sets of normal developmental chromosomes, and then you have the 23rd pair, which is the sex chromosome. This individual is a male because they have a Y chromosome. Developmentally normal females are 2 X chromosomes, but there can be deviations from that as well. You can have 2 X's and a Y. You can have 3 X's. You can have 1 X and 2 Ys. There's all kinds of genetic deviations from the duality that is normally present in most quote unquote normal individuals. Each chromosome consists of 1 molecule of deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA for short. You guys all know what DNA is, I hope. How the molecules inside DNA are arranged provide a code to the cell that instructs it to create specific amino acids, proteins, and enzymes. Those building blocks that make up literally everything in your body. So your genes, your genetic makeup is kind of the blueprints of how to build a you. Either, what color to make the eyes and how tall and how to arrange the proteins and the enzymes and everything to make all of the characteristics, and how to build your brain cells and how to build your fingernails and all kinds of things like that. That is all encoded in your genetic makeup, in your genotype. A gene is a group of compounds called nucleotide bases that provides a specific set of biochemical instructions, such as make eyes blue, make hair brown. This is just kind of what we just talked about. Genes regulate the development of all human characteristics and abilities. So anything physical or physiological, anything that you inherit from your parents, your genetic makeup, the nature part of nature versus nurture all comes from biology, from heredity, and is regulated by your genetic makeup. The complete set of genes makes up a person's heredity makeup and is known as the person's genotype. So again, what the actual genes are and the instructions that those genes carry, that is your genotype. And just because you have a particular genotype for a certain thing does not mean that it will be expressed phenotypically. Genetic instructions in conjunction with environmental influences produce a phenotype, which is an individual's physical, behavioral, and psychological factors. So phenotype is basically the external expression of both your genotype and your environmental expressions. So basically the phenotype is what is the part of you that's observable to the outside world. The actual blue eyes themselves, the brown hair, the how tall you are, how skinny you are, how smart you are. All of those things are phenotypes, and they can be influenced both by your genotype or your genetic makeup, the nature part, and as well as your environment or your experiences, your social influences, which can be the nurture part. All right, genetic disorders. What happens when things go wrong, when things don't match up or something is not expressed correctly? You have problems with the actual genes themselves. Genes are, can be malformed or defective, the genes themselves. Genetic disorders disrupt the usual pattern of development in one of 2 ways. The first is inherited disorders such as sickle cell anemia or phenylketonuria. People who have phenylketonuria are unable to process an amino acid called phenylalanine, and if you notice, like on a bottle of Diet Coke or Diet Dr. Pepper or whatever, you're going to see a little warning that says, something along the lines of, if you have phenylketonuria, do not drink this because it contains phenylalanine, and phenylalanine can be toxic and deadly to people with phenylketonuria because they are unable to process that, and that can actually affect their genetic makeup and can alter their genetic deviations. So next time you see a can of Coke or something, look for that warning. It's probably going to be in bold. But so these types of inherited disorders that you inherit from your parents, if your parents have sickle cell anemia, then it's much more likelihood that you yourself will develop that as well. And then you can have abnormal chromosomes, the chromosomes themselves. Something is wrong with the chromosome or genetic map. This is thing like Down syndrome, which is trisomy 21. So instead of having 2 21st chromosomes, they actually have 3. Inherited disorders occur when people inherit 2 recessive alleles or variations and develop genetic abnormalities as a result. People with blue eyes actually have a genetic abnormality. That is, blue eyes are recessive, and you have inherited 2 recessive alleles for blue eyes from your parents. And if you have 2 recessive alleles, as you remember from high school biology, then you will express that recessive trait. And so phenotypically, you will have blue eyes. Genotypically, you will carry the 2 recessive alleles for blue eyes. If an individual is born with abnormal, such as extra, missing, or damaged chromosomes, development is always disturbed. So don't mess around with the genes themselves, because that can have profound impacts and implications later on down the line. It can be kind of a domino or snowball effect where one small change or one small slight deviation can produce devastating results down the line, as one thing kind of builds on another and one thing develops as a result of something else. If that small little instruction, much like if you start messing around with the blueprints and you make one wall a foot longer than the outside of the house, then you're going to have a lot of problems. So the genes themselves are very, very important. Slide 14, you can actually see someone with trisomy 21. This is a female, and as you can see, they have 3 21st chromosomes. So this female has Down syndrome. Heredity, environment, and development. Behavioral genetics is the branch of genetics that deals with inheritance of behavioral and psychological traits. So how genetics or how genotypic expression can manifest itself in phenotypic expressions of behavioral traits. So how your genes affect your psychology, basically, is a branch called behavioral genetics. Genotypes are fixed when the sperm fertilizes the eggs, but phenotypes are not. Again, at fertilization, you are set in stone. Genotypically, your nature, your genes, your biology is fixed and immutable. It is unchangeable, and you will have that from the time of conception until the time you die. And that just allows the body to heal itself and replicate. And if you scratch yourself or whatever, it has the instructions to rebuild that. So not only does it have the initial instructions to build you in the first place, it also allows you to heal and maintain that body that you carry with you. Instead, phenotypes depend both on genotypes and on the environment in which the individual develops. This is nature and nurture. So both your genes and your environment can go into influencing who you are and what you are. And that is, again, the phenotypic expression of a multitude of influences, both biological and environmental. Whereas most biological phenotypes are expressed in terms of either or, such as, you're either colorblind or you're not, Many psychological and behavioral characteristics lie somewhere on a continuum, such as extroversion or intelligence or physical attractiveness or something like that. These things, they it's not an either or. It's not some binary system where it's either black or white. There's shades of gray. There's it's called a continuous variable, where there are different levels. Someone can be more extroverted than someone else, and be less extroverted than yet another person. So there's no set marker. It's not a light switch that can be flipped on or off. There are degrees or variables that are along a scale, and that scale can slide one way or the other, one direction or the other. When phenotypes reflect the combined activity of many separate genes, the resulting pattern of activity is known as polygenic inheritance. Poly meaning multiple, so multiple genes go into this inherited characteristic. So if it's something that is singular, one singular gene like Down syndrome, then that could be something that is single genetic influence. But something that is polygenetically inherited, that means that multiple genes are speaking in concert, and there are multiple sources of influence from the expression of whatever this might be. For example, many genes contribute to the expression of extroversion or intelligence. A lot of different things go into what that is. One of the most effective ways of teasing apart the combined influence of genes and environment on behavior is through twin studies. Because identical twins. Because identical twins share 100% of their DNA, any differences between them can be assumed to be 100% environmental. If one twin is an angel and the other is a monster, then we can assume that because they share 100% of their DNA, the niceness is not something that is genetically loaded, or otherwise both of them would be the exact same. That's something that has an environmental basis, and the only thing that differs between them is their environment. Because identical twins share 100% of their DNA, it can be assumed that any differences expressed between them are due to environmental or other external factors. That's just what I was just talking about. Identical twins are called monozygotic twins because they come from a single fertilized egg that splits in two. So you basically have what should have developed into one person has now developed into two or three or four, depending on whether it's identical twins or triplets or quadruplets. But one egg fertilized by one sperm makes them essentially one person in more than one body, genetically speaking. In contrast, fraternal or dizygotic twins come from two separate eggs fertilized by two separate sperm. They are no more genetically identical than regular siblings. They are just born very close together. For identical twins, they are always the same sex. If one is female, the other is also female. But dizygotic twins are essentially just regular siblings. If one can be a boy and his sister can be born 5 minutes before him, whatever, and they're considered twins because they were born very close together, but they resulted from the same pregnancy. But they are no more genetically identical than regular siblings. So how do our genes work to influence a person's behavioral and psychological development? In three ways. The first, heredity and environment interact dynamically throughout development. Your genes can influence the kind of environment to which a person is exposed. And finally, your environmental influences can typically make children within a family different. So the first one, heredity and environment working together. Genes and environments are constantly interacting to produce phenotypes throughout a person's development. This is what happens probably 95% of the time. The phenotypic expression is due to both genes and environment. Nature and nurture are going to work together to create a specific expression, specific behavior, specific trait. Again, we can't really tease apart the influence of genes from environment. You can't say that this is 100% due to environment, or this is 100% due to genes, with the exception of identical twins, which is kind of what makes them so valuable for kind of developmental studies. A particular genotype or genetic makeup will lead to a particular phenotype only if the environment cooperates and allows that genotype to come through and express itself. So again, you might have a genetic predisposition towards aggressiveness or towards psychopathy or whatever, and outside of the perfect storm, the environmental construct in which that gene is able to express itself, you won't possess that trait. And this can hold true for everything from like psychopathy to breast cancer. Just because a woman holds the gene for breast cancer does not mean that woman will get breast cancer. And just because you get breast cancer does not necessarily mean that you have the gene. So a lot of these things can work in concert, and things that might have a genetic loading or a genetic predisposition, they might make you more likely to behave a certain way or to develop a certain thing. It's not something that is a 1-to-1 ratio. There are things that can outside of the right environment, those things will not be expressed. And within the right environment, they can be expressed without even the genetic predisposition. So these things kind of work together and work in concert, and for all intents and purposes, it's nature and nurture. So that's them kind of working together. The heritability coefficient is a measure of the extent to which a trait or characteristic is inherited. Things with a high inheritability coefficient, like eye color or something like that, have a very, very positive genetic loading. A great deal of the variance is explained by genes or by biology. But certain psychological traits like agreeableness or extroversion, those anything that's polygenetically inherited, probably is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to completely describe or define where that trait comes from, and whether it's expressed from biology or from environment, because no one can escape their biology and no one can escape their environment. We are kind of a collection of our experiences, and so because you carry that with you for the entirety of your life, much like you do your genetic makeup, your genotype. And so whether you can say that one thing is completely genetic in makeup or completely environmental is not really useful. It's not really accurate. What is a much better explanation is that they work together. That in the right environment, the genetic expression is allowed to blossom or flourish, if you will. The second way, genes can and do influence the developmental environment. A person's genotype can lead others to respond to that person in a very specific way. In other words, nature can influence the kind of nurture that a child receives. So you can either have it come together at the same time, kind of an interactive effect, or you can have biology influence your environment. Something like intelligence or physical attractiveness. Someone who is, intelligence again is that continuous variable. There are varying degrees. It's not like someone is intelligent or they are not. So someone might be more intelligent than someone else, and that the person with higher intelligence or the person with lower intelligence is going to have a much different environment, is going to have a much different set of activities or interests or things like that than someone who is on the other side of the spectrum. If you're very, very highly intelligent, you might choose more intellectually stimulating activities. You might be a chess player, or you might spend more time reading, or something like that. You might go to MIT or Harvard, which would be a completely different environment intellectually than someplace like I don't know, pretty much any other school. Very few places can compete with those top universities, but so you can kind of see how things that are more genetic, that we consider to be more genetic, might can and do influence the type of environment that you have. And this process of deliberately seeking environments that are compatible with one's genetic makeup is called niche picking. So more intelligent people playing chess or going to MIT or Harvard or whatever, that's niche picking. Being able to kind of selectively choose where your genetic traits are going to be able to be expressed in kind of the best place to put you, so to speak. And then finally, we have environment kind of influencing your the type of genetic makeup you have, influencing the type of environment that you express. A child's environment can make him or her different from his or her siblings, so your environment can also influence your genes. So we have genes and environment working together, nature and nurture working together. We have nature influencing nature influencing the environment, and we have the environment influencing nature. So these two things kind of work in concert together, and they have different qualities and different amounts in a particular recipe for any kind of trait or behavioral expression of any phenotypic quality that you can imagine. Some things have more genetic loading, some things have more environmental loading, but again, about 99% of the time, it's genes and environment working together. Children within a family should be similar because they all receive the same type of effective or ineffective parenting. Right? No, that's not true at all. Not all children are treated equally. The family environment usually affects each child in a unique way, making siblings different from one another. Try as you might want to treat your children the same, but your children are different. They're gonna be their own unique people, their own unique individuals. One child might be very well behaved, and another child might be a little menace, and you're going to treat those two children much differently. The child who behaves himself might get more rewards, and the child who continues to act up might get more punishments. That's a differing environment, even within the same household. So you might try to treat your children the same. That's just not feasible, or just not possible in 99.9% of the cases. This is called non-shared environmental influences, and these are the forces within a family that make children differ from one another, such as differing levels of parental affection or discipline. One child might be more needy or clingy and want that close connection with the parents, and another child might be more of a loner or more of an introvert and want to spend more time alone. So they're not going to get the same level of parental affection or attention that their more their more needy sibling might, and they're just fine with that. But that means that they are getting a different type of environment than their other siblings. Influences on prenatal development. The first is nutrition. The mother is a developing child's sole source of nutrition, so a balanced diet that includes foods from each of the 5 major food groups is vital. Again, what nourishes the mother also nourishes the baby. So you want to have your baby develop fully. You want them to have all the nutrients and proteins and vitamins and minerals that they can, so that the baby is able to pound out some growth. So most mothers, tend to kind of overhaul their eating habits when they get pregnant. Most pregnant women need to take in about 10 to 20% more calories during pregnancy to meet the needs of the developing fetus. They're eating for two. So the nutrients usually go to feed the mother first, and then what's left will go to feed the infant or the child, the baby, whatever. So if the mother's only taking in enough to nourish herself, then there's very little left for the developing fetus. So most mothers are going to need to eat, about 10 to 20% more in order to feed the child growing inside of her. Not only is the amount of food important, but also what is consumed. Proteins, vitamins, and minerals are all essential for normal prenatal development. Most doctors will recommend that their pregnant patients increase their intake of folic acid, for example, because a deficiency in folic acid can result in development of spina bifida, which is where the developing fetus's spine becomes very, very curved, and they essentially walk on all fours. They're not able to stand up straight. So that can be quite profound. So you might hear that pregnant women should increase their intake of folic acid. If you've never taken it before, and then when you get pregnant is definitely the time to start. Proper nutrition is also essential for normal birth weight. Lack of nutrition in the mother can lead to low birth weight or deficiencies in nervous system development. Again, eat enough for both you and the child. Stress. Stress refers to the physical and psychological responses to threatening or challenging conditions. Yeah, that's what stress is. Studies have shown that women who report greater anxiety during pregnancy more often give birth early or have babies who weigh less than average. This again, stress can cause all kinds of havoc, from the release of cortisol, the stress hormone, which can bind itself to fat cells and make fats, the release of fat cells much more difficult. So people who are stressed out usually tend to gain weight and find it much harder to lose weight. Adrenaline kicking in, the fight or flight response, the sympathetic nervous system kicking in and flooding your bloodstream with adrenaline when we're stressed out, that can wreak havoc. And the little child developing inside of you is also going, what goes into your bloodstream also goes into theirs. Increased stress can harm prenatal development in several ways. Firstly, stress can cause the mother's body to secrete hormones that reduce the flow of oxygen to the fetus while increasing heart rate and activity level. So again, the mother's body will take precedence. So if fight or flight kicks in, then what the mother's body's needs, evolutionarily will increase the chances of both of their survival. So the body will take care of the mother's needs first, over the needs of the fetus, and anything that's left over will go to the developing child. Secondly, stress can weaken a pregnant woman's immune system, making her more susceptible to illness that can in turn damage fetal development. So when we're stressed out, we tend to get sick more, and a sick mother means a sick baby. Thirdly, pregnant women under stress are more likely to smoke or drink alcohol and are less likely to rest, exercise, and eat properly. When we're stressed, we tend to take a lot of shortcuts. So we might drive through McDonald's as opposed to coming home and cooking a meal. You might, if you smoke, you might smoke more. If you drink, you might drink more. This is all in a need to cope, which is fine, usually. But when you're providing sustenance to a developing child, then that's something that needs to be taken into account. Mother's age. Mother's age can have problems on both ends of the spectrum. Too young can present one set of challenges. Too old can present another. On the other side, teenage women are much more likely to have problems during pregnancy, labor, and delivery than women in their 20s or even their 30s. This is likely due in large part to economic disadvantage and lack of good prenatal care. That doesn't mean that if you get pregnant when you're young that you are doomed. That doesn't mean that if you wait that you're going to have smooth sailing. It's just, statistically speaking, all things being equal, mothers who get pregnant in their, when they're 15, 16, 17, makes things like finishing high school that much more difficult. They usually have to get a job to support the child. If dad is not around, then that complicates things even further. Younger couples don't tend to stay together. But if you have a good, rich family support structure, you have, mom and dad, you have grandparents, whatever, that can help financially, can help, with all of the expensive vitamins and doctor's appointments and things like that, then that can ease a lot of the burden. But, not everyone has that familial help and that kind of that safety blanket that helps relieve a lot of the stress of having a child when you are really kind of still a child yourself. So again, all things being equal, you will have a harder time if you give birth early on, and again, that's not really physically a problem like it is for older women, but it tends to be more economic and socioeconomic difficulties, and that can affect a wide range of factors or facets of your life. Nevertheless, even when a teenager receives adequate prenatal care and gives birth to a healthy baby, the difficulties do not end there. Children of teenage mothers generally do less well in school and more often have behavioral problems than those of older women. No, they don't. I don't like that. The book has that in there, and I'm not sure I completely agree with that. I think that's kind of an overgeneralization. But just because you have a child at a young age does not mean that your child is going to be developmentally deficient. That is absurd. So don't read too much into that. I probably shouldn't have made that red. But statistically speaking, again, they're going to have a harder time at it. But there are things like outliers and whatnot that can go against the grain and excel in times of stress or whatever. And there are people who give birth under the perfect circumstances and never have a moment of peace. So it's not that's really kind of an overgeneralization that is not really a good one to make. What about older women? Women in their 20s are twice as fertile as women in their 30s. For women 35 and older, the risks of miscarriage and stillbirth increase rapidly, with the rate increasing to almost 50% for women over the age of 40. So again, women at birth, they have all the eggs that they will have for the rest of their life, and the eggs age along with the woman. It's not like a man that continuously regenerates sperm. Women have everything they will have for the rest of their life, carrying with them, and every month you get rid of one. So it's as things age, as things get older, they're not as viable, they're not as fruitful. Much like your body, as you get older, you're going to have more problems with it. A computer, as it gets older, it's going to have more problems. Things tend to develop more problems as they get older, and your eggs are no different. So the longer you wait, the older and less viable each of your remaining eggs are. And so the chances of something going wrong developmentally are quite high, especially if you wait till you're in your 40s. Some women are able to give birth in their 50s. Up until menopause, you're able to technically get pregnant. But once you hit menopause, that's it. Your fertile years are behind you. So again, once women hit about the age of 35, that's usually when your biological clock starts ticking, and that's kind of your body's way of saying, hey, if you want a kid, now you better get to it. So most women will hit their sexual peak in their mid-30s. And most men hit their sexual peak around the age of shortly after puberty, and it never really leaves. So women, this biological clock, this impending, doom of menopause can tend to affect a great many things, and that's kind of your body's way of saying, get to it. However, physically, the best time for a woman to conceive is when she is in her 20s and no older than 35. That's kind of the golden window of opportunity, if you will. Anything outside of that window, and you're increasing the risks. Again, if you're on the younger side, it's more socioeconomic and financial, and if you're on the older side, it tends to be more physical and developmental. Any older or younger in the pregnancy and upbringing has a much higher chance of something going wrong. Let me get a drink here. Excuse me. All right, teratogens. A teratogen is an agent that causes abnormal prenatal development. Anything that alters the course of normal, quote-unquote, development is a teratogen. Teratogens can make stuff better or make stuff worse. Technically, prenatal vitamins are teratogens. So is, radiation. Something as minute as a microwave oven or a cell phone, or, anything more profound, fallout or whatever, I don't know. But anything that's going to alter the development of the fetus in either direction is a teratogen. Teratogen can fall into one of three categories: a drug, a disease, or an environmental hazard. Some common teratogens are alcohol, aspirin, caffeine, nicotine, and all illicit recreational drugs like cocaine, marijuana, heroin, methamphetamines, all of those. Of these, alcohol, of course, carries a very severe risk. Pregnant women who regularly consume alcoholic beverages may give birth to babies with something called fetal alcohol syndrome, or FAS. Children with FAS usually grow more slowly than normal and have heart problems and misshapen faces. So, women kind of tend to inherently know that if they're pregnant, they shouldn't drink alcohol. Drugs and everything else like that is the same way. Because again, what goes into your body also goes into the fetus's body. They tend to have a small head, a thin upper lip, a short nose, and widely spaced eyes. I've kind of included a picture there of a child with fetal alcohol syndrome, and they tend to be slower mentally. They have all kinds of developmental difficulties, and it can really turn out quite bad. And there's just no reason to put your child at such a disadvantage from something that is so preventable. Fetal alcohol syndrome is the leading cause of developmental disabilities in the United States. That's just begging to be made a test question. And children with FAS have serious attentional, cognitive, and behavioral problems. So this can also be, things like not only alcohol but also drugs. You're all heard of the babies who are born to drug addicted mothers who come out and as soon as they're born they're addicted to crack or heroin, and they have to be detoxed from the addiction that they got from their mothers. And it's really quite sad that the mother's addiction was so strong that she wasn't able to stop even when she was pregnant. She passed that onto her child. Prenatal diagnosis and treatment. Today there are several new techniques that have revolutionized our ability to monitor prenatal growth and development. Again, we have, technology has advanced to the point where we can now, kind of get a picture of of the developing child, developing fetus, and see, make sure there's nothing really going seriously wrong. We can conduct genetic tests and make sure that everything is progressing along as it should. One of these techniques is ultrasound, whereby sound waves are used to generate a picture of the fetus. So they, much like it's essentially a small little radar, and it shoots sound waves through the mother's abdomen, and anything solid will reflect those back, just like the the fish finder on your bass boat. So this can kind of give a picture of the. You guys all know what sonograms are, ultrasounds. To see if they have arms growing out of the top of their head, or they have 3 legs, or whatever. It's just kind of a good visual picture of what's going on. It's also one of the ways that the child's sex is determined. If you see a little 3rd leg coming out, then congratulations, it's a boy. Ultrasound can be used to determine the sex of the fetus, its position within the uterus, and whether or not there are twins or triplets. So again, just kind of giving a small little visual picture, a good once-over. Make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. If a genetic disorder is suspected, there are 2 other techniques that may be valuable. The first is amniocentesis, and the second is something called chronic villus sampling. In amniocentesis, a syringe is used to withdraw a sample of amniotic fluid through the mother's abdomen. And when I say syringe, I use that term lightly because it's about that long, and they pop it right into mother's abdomen and draw out amniotic fluid straight from the sac that's encasing the fetus. And that fluid contains flaked off skin cells from the developing fetus. Those skin cells have cells that have genes, and you can look at how what's going on there and create a genetic map of the genotype of this child. And you can see if they they have Down syndrome or any other kind of developmental disorder that needs to be taken care of. Chronic villus sampling is a prenatal diagnostic technique that involves taking a sample of tissue from the chorion, which is kind of a mucousy plug at the bottom of the placenta. It's possible to use CVS much earlier than amniocentesis, which allows for an earlier diagnosis of many fetal genetic abnormalities. So if there's something that might potentially be life-threatening for the mother or the child, then they'll do a CVS and see if the pregnancy might be something that might need to be terminated to save the life of the mother. If the child is not viable, etc., then that can also be determined. And that's it. That is the first chapter. So again, I will upload this. I'm real tired of doing this chapter. This is about, like I said, about the 3rd time I had to do it. So hopefully this works out and I'm able to post this. But I will do the other chapters here pretty shortly. Again, your first exam has 5 of these, so I will upload them here pretty regularly. But now that I've kind of gotten all the technical kinks ironed out, it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Again, I apologize that it's taken me this long to get the first video up, but all the notes are there. Make sure you watch the videos that are also on the modules tab. So if that's it, again, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. Let me know. I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right. Take care. See you next time.